Hello and welcome to Line Check episode 3. My guest today is Gabe Helguera. He's the drummer from Prevail as well as the owner and operator of the popular YouTube channel Drum Beats Online. I had such a fantastic time talking with Gabe and filming this episode. It was really incredible getting to chat with Gabe about his personal story, where he came from, his roots, his early influences. We talked at length about Prevail, his experiences on tour with the band, how it came to be that he joined that band. As well, we covered lots of details around Drum Beats Online, what the website means to him, what the YouTube channel means to him. And yeah, just overall, I think this was a really, really amazing episode. I really am excited to hear what you guys think of our conversation. So without further ado, Line Check episode 3 with Gabe Helguera, the drummer from Prevail. Okay, so I am super stoked to be chatting with you today. So first of all, thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me.
Dude, my pleasure, man. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm stoked. I just want to say right off the bat that like your videos are incredible. You're an incredible drummer. So I'm stoked to be a part of it.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. So we've got a ton to talk about. I want to talk about your channel. I want to talk about the new release. I want to talk about how that all came to be, how the whole project came together. So let's start off with trauma, because obviously like most of my viewers are going to be here because of something to do with that release. So let's start off with trauma. As of this record, you are officially a part of the band now, right? Like you've become a touring member, you're a full-time member. Is that the case?
It's funny. It's unofficially official, if that makes sense. So basically that, I've been playing with Prevail for about 2.5 years, but just as a touring member. And I mean, it's been an incredible experience. We've got along really, really well. I mean, these guys are like super awesome. It's really surprising to me how I could walk in without knowing any of them, and we all just like got along really well. So yeah, I've been doing the touring member thing for 2 years, and we kind of agreed like as we move into like this new phase, the next album, that we would like to kind of have me move in that direction of being an official member. So I did like the promo pictures with them for the album, and basically as soon as people saw me in the promo pictures, like I just started hearing people say like, oh, well, he's the official member now, even though like on our end, it's like, oh yeah, like that's the direction we're moving, but it's not like I signed a piece of paper that says like, I'm officially a member, but essentially, yes, I am. And if not currently right now, it'll be like official before the next tour. So yes, it's a long answer. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. So how long have you been with the band now?
So I started touring with them in February of 2017. So a little over 2 years, maybe a little closer to 2.5 years.
And how did that come to be? Was that something that they found you because of YouTube or because of, chatting with guys in the local scene? How did you guys get hooked up?
Yeah, it actually, I always kind of thought an opportunity, I always kind of had hoped an opportunity would come like through YouTube. I've seen that happen to other people, like Luke Holland or something like that, which was like sick. I was like, oh man, I would love for that to happen. But no, funny enough, it mostly happened through like playing locally. So before that, I played locally like crazy. And funny enough, I made friends with a sound guy at a church that I played at, and he like always loved my drumming. But I mean, for the most part, like I was just like a pocket player, right? So like I was playing at churches or playing locally in pop, rock, country bands, whatever. And that sound guy ended up becoming Prevail's front of house sound guy. And eventually when they needed a new drummer, he asked me if I'd be interested in auditioning and all that. And it was kind of one of those things where I was like, I mean, I don't really play heavy music, like I played heavy music growing up a little bit, but in terms of like, I was never in a heavy band or anything like that. So there was a lot for me to learn, but I decided like, yeah, like I'll try it, and eventually had to like teach myself double bass pedal, and basically walked in like to a cold audition without knowing any of the guys, and they thought I was good enough. So kind of literally a month later, I was on tour with them. So it happened pretty quickly.
That's insane. That's insane that you weren't really even in metal to a degree, that you came from these other backgrounds. Do you think that having the experience inside of country and playing consistently for like a church performance setting, do you think that's helped you or hindered you stepping into metalcore for the first time?
Honestly, I think it helped tremendously. I mean, clearly it hurt in the sense of I had no left foot, like I didn't play with a double bass pedal. So that part was a huge hurdle I had to get over. But because I grew up listening to like Under Oath and August Burns Red, I had, I was familiar with the scene. And over the years, I would notice something in certain metal drummers that frustrated me in terms of, I noticed a lot of metal drummers were so robotic where they could like play insane blast beats and it's sick. But if you're like, hey, now like play a pocket, like most of them couldn't, like they couldn't really add feel into a lot of their beats. So that always kind of like frustrated me. So I think stepping into I Prevail, it was a benefit in terms of I could take the metal drum parts and add a little bit more feel to them, like from my more like pop background, where it's like, oh, well, I could throw in like some ghost notes here, or like just a little bit, a different fill that's not just 16th notes around the kit, So there are definitely like pros and cons, like stepping into that. The con being I was terrible at double bass, and that's still something I'm trying to improve on. But the pro is I felt that I could like add more groove into the overall sound, which was really cool, I thought.
So you stepping into double bass is absolutely something I want to talk about for a little bit, because when I'm talking with even some of the guys that hang out on my community Discord server, and I'm trying to help guys sort of get into metalcore, that's almost always the biggest hurdle for a lot of new players coming into the genre is just the left foot, getting it up to speed with the right, getting the same level of comfort and control with the left as the right. So what are some of the things that you did? Was there like a set of exercises that you would do every day, or what are some of the tactics you employed to really get your left foot up to speed with your right?
For sure. Well, I had to act fast, because basically from the time like I initially talked to them about this being a possibility to my audition was maybe about 4 weeks. So basically I dropped everything, and for like 6 hours a day was just working on double bass pedal. So the exercises, actually I really only went over a few. It wasn't a ton. So I'll do my best to describe it with talking.
Yeah.
But basically what I would do, and I actually learned this exercise from Luke Holland. A few years back, I did a couple lessons with him, and I think I kind of asked him that question, basically exactly what you just asked me. And his answer was, do quarter notes on the ride, snare drum just on beat 3, right? And then it's a ladder exercise of every measure, you're gonna change what your feet are doing. So, and everything is alternated. So the first measure, you're just playing quarter notes on the kick pedal, but alternating, even though it's super simple. Then the next measure, you go up to 8th notes. Then the next measure, you go up to 8th note triplets. The next measure, you go up to 16th notes. And then the last measure is 16th note triplets. And then you basically just keep repeating that over and over. And I noticed that it built an incredible amount of control in my legs and in my feet, because you get really comfortable at not only like each subdivision, but even changing the subdivisions within just like a measure away from each other. And then like as you get comfortable, like you can take it all the way up and then start from 16th note triplets and then work your way back down rather than like restarting. Honestly, that to me, that's been the best exercise really of all of them. A lot of the other ones were just slowing the I Prevail songs down to like a slower tempo and just like practicing them that way, because I wanted to learn the parts as well. But yeah, I would recommend that exercise over all of them. That's so crazy to me that you're saying that, because literally before we got on this call, I was actually editing the second episode of Feet where I was breaking down a pyramid or a subdivision pyramid on your feet. So that's exactly how I did it too. That's what I tell a lot of guys. Dude, that's beautiful. Heck yeah. I fully endorse it.
Yeah. That's so awesome to hear. Right on, man. Right on. So what kind of pedals, I know we're on Feet for a minute here. I want to cover a couple of things real quick. So what kind of pedals do you play? Are you in the longboard or the standard footboard world?
It's a standard footboard. I started off like, because when I first had to buy a double bass pedal, I bought a couple to try to like do some testing with them because I wasn't sure which ones I wanted. So initially I got a Mapex Falcon and a DW 9000 longboard. And I ended up choosing the Mapex Falcon. The DW, I felt like I had to really like fight with, or I really had to like fight for each note. Even though there's like a lot of power that I could get with the note, it felt just hard to execute. So I ended up going with the Mapex Falcon. Unfortunately, over just touring with Prevail for like a year and a half, they broke on me, unfortunately. So now more recently, I've gone with the new Iron Cobras, and I think those are just standard foot pedal, but I love them. I think they feel really good. I noticed like some parts that I struggled with before, like I kind of don't struggle with as much anymore because it just feels better to me. So yeah, the new Iron Cobras are sick.
So you come out of playing in like church groups, you come out of playing for country, and you're gonna go and play for this pretty substantial sized metalcore band. What was it like the first time you had to step on stage with those guys? Were you super nervous? Were you really well prepared? Did you not really feel it? What was going through your head?
Oh man, it's a great question because I remember exactly how it felt. So I remember literally, and they didn't tell me this until like 30 minutes before the set, but they're like, oh man, this is the biggest show we've ever played. And I was like, wait, what? My first show is the biggest show that you've ever played? Or at least the biggest headliner set. I think they played some festivals before. So I really felt that like in that moment. But yeah, I mean, I was nervous for sure. I think like it was one of those things where it's like I did feel very prepared in terms of like I really knew the music in terms of, it was one of those things where it was weird because I was prepared in terms of the music. I knew the flow of all the songs. I knew how to play them. But, you know, with having just such a new beginning in the double bass pedal world, it was still such like a wild card where you just kind of never know. It's like, well, I was playing them in practice and like it felt relatively comfortable, but you never know what it's going to feel like when your adrenaline's pumping, you know? And then I think, so we walked out to the crowd and it's just one of the biggest shows, like immediately my first show with them is one of the biggest shows that I've ever played. So I really felt that. And then I think like on the second song, the chain on my double bass pedal like actually came loose. So to like figure that out. So it was like some combination of freaking out, but trying to like really exude like confidence because I just knew that I had to like show up and hopefully kill it, you know? But then, you know, also just being really nervous for a ton of obvious reasons.
So in the case of your double bass pedal, your chain coming loose, when gear malfunctions for you live, first of all, how often does it happen? And when it does happen, when something goes wrong like that, what are some things that you do to counter it, to adjust, to keep on going?
That's a great question. So in terms of how often it happens, more than I want it to. I'm trying to give like a number, maybe a few times a tour, you know, but it can be any number of things. Where I've blown through my kick head before, and for that we had to literally get the drummer of the opening act's kick drum and replace that in mid-set. So like stuff like that is crazy. I've certainly had my fair share of double kick pedal issues. Generally, it's really whatever I can think of in that moment. So there have been times where on like one of our heaviest songs, like my right kick pedal like just breaks. So I have to play the entire thing on my left foot and there's like no time to play double pedal. So I mean, I just try to adjust as much as I can. It's like, okay, the only option I have is to keep pushing forward, but with like my left foot in that moment. Because you can't, for me, my approach is I'm not gonna stop the song. Like if the song is going, unless like my entire drum set explodes, like I wanna keep the song going. There's gonna be a portion of the audience that understands something's wrong, but in between songs, they're gonna see me fix it and it's gonna make the flow of the show much better rather than if you stop mid-song, that it really, really brings the energy down. So whatever the situation is, like in the case of like blowing through my kick head, I just kind of keep trucking forward, maybe try to throw in some floor tom notes to try to act as a bass drum. But sometimes you can get away with it and it's not like super noticeable, and other times it is. And my approach is to just keep pushing forward and then try to frantically fix it in between the songs. And the guys are really good. Like I'll kind of let them know like, hey, something's wrong, and they'll kind of stall or talk to the audience in some way that makes the transition a lot smoother rather than everyone just watching me fix stuff.
Right on, man. That's good that you have that support on stage. That can be tough when the other musicians sort of express their frustration, and it doesn't really help move the show along or correct the mistake for that matter. Oh,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, what am I going to do? It's not necessarily my fault if something breaks, right? Like gear breaks, stuff happens. It's not because of like negligence, and they all understand that. So yeah, I mean, the vibe with them is so great. Like there's never been a time where I've walked off stage, and everyone has mistakes, but there's never been a time where I've walked off stage and they like scold me for anything, right? Like, generally it's like, well, if I made a mistake, I know that I made a mistake, and like, I'm going to try to fix it the next time. No one really needs it. A lot of the times we just laugh about it, but yeah.
So before you go on stage, do you have like a certain ritual that you'll go through, or does it incorporate like a warm up, or is there certain music you'll listen to that puts you in the zone? What do you do right before walking on?
Well, we all have a ritual with each other, and if you're familiar with Hot Rod, the movie Hot Rod, there's a little ritual that Andy Samberg's character does with his stepbrother in the movie before he goes to fight his stepdad. So we like line up in a circle and we do that little like ritual. I won't repeat it now because it's really embarrassing, but there are video clips of it on some of my vlogs. It's funny because we all love that movie. But then we all, like, each individual member has like a secret handshake with each other. So we all go through, and I do like something with Brian, Steve, Dylan, and Eric. And then we all go on stage together. In terms of me personally, I always try to warm up somehow. It's generally just a series of stretching my legs, stretching my arms, my upper body, trying to like get the blood flowing a little bit, stretching my wrists and my forearms for sure. And then just like a little warm up with the sticks. And a big part of it for me is just mental. Like I try to, even if it's only for 30 seconds, just like have 30 seconds to myself where I can just close my eyes and kind of just like send positive thoughts to myself in a way. Like I've realized with stage fright and people like preparing a bunch but then going on stage and like really fumbling, it's all mental because you've seen yourself play it. The only difference is there's some people in the room. So if you can like access the same mental place that you could in your practice room, then like there's kind of nothing to worry about. So I try to make sure to just spend a little bit of time for myself, whether you call that meditation or what, whether it's 30 seconds or 5 minutes. Just do a little bit of that with myself, and then we do the handshakes with the guys, and then we go have a great time.
So in prepping for a tour, before you're about to go out with the band, what kind of rehearsal schedule, practice schedule, what kind of things do you guys do to get ready for a tour? And what do those sessions sort of look like?
So, a lot of it depends on the tour specifically, because sometimes, generally when we start a tour cycle, right, like the cycle has maybe 6 tours within it. So we're gone for, 2 months, and then home for anywhere from like 2 days to 3 weeks. Generally, in between those tours, there's very little rehearsing because we literally just played the songs like every day for 2 months straight. We might meet up a couple times to just like brush everything up and make sure we're good. However, with like what we're doing currently right now, where we haven't been touring much at all, plus there's a bunch of new songs that we have to learn together. We practice every day, or at least Monday through Friday. And it's pretty standard. We have like a little rehearsal storage space A majority of our rehearsals have been done in literally just a small storage unit. It's actually the unit that they filmed the Blank Space cover in, or that little video that they filmed Blank Space in, was just a storage unit that they put some black sheets up on. And that's where we did all of our rehearsals up until the past few months. But yeah, no, we normally just get together every day, run through the set basically once, goof around a little bit, and then head out on the road.
Do you guys, when you're in those sessions, like, do you perform the songs at 100%, sort of pretending that there's a crowd in front of you, or is it just kind of like chilling in sweatpants, just run through the song sort of type atmosphere? What's the feel like?
We talk about doing that a lot, but we end up, we talk through like all the transitions and like what we want to do with the crowd in terms of like, okay, this moment in the song, we want, like, this is when we're going to tell the crowd to jump, or, put your phones up, or, do whatever. So we know like exactly where those are going to be in the set, and like the transitions from song to song, which are super important. But in terms of just overall energy and stage presence, for the most part, we don't practice that. I think it comes pretty naturally for a lot of us. I mean, for all of us at this point. Generally, what we do, and like what we're doing for this tour, is a few days before the tour, we go to Nashville, and we have like a big rehearsal space where we essentially run the show with all the lights, with the backdrop and everything, but we're not playing to anyone. So generally, like in those 2 days beforehand, we'll perform the show like full on energy. But especially for me, even just going and running through the set every day, even without doing like full on energy, I generally get home and I'm like exhausted, like playing. And I mean, like playing that type of music just as a drummer takes so much energy. So especially if I was putting the full energy that I was on stage just every day, I'd be going to bed at like 3 p.m. every single day just from exhaustion.
So playing onto that point, recently Travis Barker recently was on one of the Joe Rogan podcast episodes, and he was talking about some of the training that he does before tours to maintain himself before he goes out, so he can endure through the punishment that we put ourselves through behind the kit every night on stage. Some of the things he was talking about was just like the cardio that he'll do, or battle ropes, stuff like that. Do you have exercises, or do you go for runs, or is there something that you do to try and keep your stamina up so you can better handle and better perform for during these long tours? I just listened to that podcast this week, and I thought that was really interesting. It really got me thinking, because I mean, especially Travis, he was saying, he's in his 40s now, and he's still playing like he was playing when he was in his teens, which is incredible. And that's something I never really thought about, or like thought to put time into, of like, how can I keep my endurance up? I think I'm someone who is always, not always, but always, like, I guess I just said it again, but exercise is really important. It's a part of my daily life. I generally exercise about 5 days a week, but the exercising is just a part of who I am and like what I like to do. I'm not really thinking about drumming as a part of it. I just try to live like a healthy lifestyle. But I don't know, the Travis Barker thing with like trying to do battle ropes for like a super long time, just because the repetitive motion of it is serious. Like when I first go on tour, I notice that my right shoulder just starts bothering me, and that's because so much of the music, right? Like you're up on like your main crash, or like your China, and I notice like after a week or so, like my right shoulder just starts to hurt from doing that repetitive motion so much. But aside from just exercising and like living a relatively active lifestyle, there's nothing that I do to prep for that. But I might start, because I am running into certain issues, and I love Travis Barker, and I think that's a great idea. Hell yeah, right on. So when you're out on the road, just playing to the health side of things, I imagine that you have probably a pretty healthy diet if you're concerned about your overall fitness. What kind of food do you eat when you're out on the road?
Yeah, I mean, I do my best. When it's definitely easier to eat healthy at home. You're in full control over everything you eat, with the groceries that you get. But what's great about it is the guitar player, Steve, in the band, he's actually vegan. So generally there's something available for him. So if everyone else, and it's not everyone, but if there's like just a ton of pizza, like there has to be something for Steve. So it's like, if there's generally some alternative option, but generally what I try to do as soon as like I'm in a new city, I try to look up like the nearest Chipotle. That's like my safe haven.
Hell yes.
But what's nice is that like on the bus, you can have a certain amount of groceries. So I normally try to like, we have like a little like NutriBullet on the bus. So I'll generally do like a protein smoothie for breakfast and just like try to pack it with a bunch of like fruits and veggies and stuff like that. And then for lunch, I might try to look for some Chipotle or something. But then, throughout the day, like it's easy to pack like apples and almond butter or like protein bars or a bunch of nuts or, stuff like that. The thing that is hard about it is a lot of the times you play major cities, right? So there is stuff around. But every once in a while, you go to a venue that's just not around anything. And if you're out of groceries on the bus, it's kind of like, shoot, I might only eat like once today, So, or the alternative is I either eat once today or I'm just going to like go crazy on this pizza. So that might just end up being like a not healthy day. But for the most part, yeah, it's a combination of looking for healthy options around, but also storing up a bunch of healthy options on the bus as well.
So during the days when you get to a new place, do you in particular, but the other members as well, do you guys spend a lot of time sort of exploring and getting to know the area you're in, or do you just sort of stick to the bus, stick to the green room?
The second option for sure. It's interesting because I feel like, and maybe, I'm sure there are other bands that do this, but I always feel that the perception is like, oh man, it must be so cool to tour because you get to just like see so many different places. But the issue is with like the way your day is broken up. So maybe you roll into a place at 10:30 and then it's like, okay, well, I'm going to try to find a local gym. So then you sometimes have to walk up to a mile to get to the gym, which ends up making the whole experience just longer. Then going to get lunch, by the time like you get back, it might be like 1:30 and then it's like, oh, well, shoot, now it's time for sound check. Then you do sound check. And then for me personally, I'm doing the Drum Beats Online thing. So what I try to do is stockpile a bunch of videos before tour. So I'm generally editing a bunch of videos, trying to post content. So for me, I really try to keep working on like the thing that I really love to do. So that doesn't allow me as much time to go out and explore. And also, sometimes you're limited to where you're at. Sometimes the places you're at aren't super awesome or super touristy. We were, about 2 weeks ago, we were in Australia, and that was certainly different, right? Like we were in Australia and we thankfully were in like right in Sydney. So we got to see the Sydney Opera House and we got to really experience that, which was cool. But if we're generally just doing like a US or even like a Canada tour, a lot of the times we're just like getting food, unless there's something like really cool around. Maybe on an off day, it would be different where we might go explore a little bit. But generally for me, I try to fill up any free time I have with editing videos and making content on my channel and on my website.
Right on, man. That's really good to hear that you still stay so into the side hustle while you're out. I know a lot of guys can really get caught up in tour, and it can be really difficult, tour or studio. I've always found it can be really difficult to take yourself out of your immediate surroundings and sort of focus on something outside of what's going on with the band or whatever it is. So that's really, really awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, it's really hard. Like, it would be much easier to be able to like just, get to the place, maybe go to the gym, do sound check, and then like hang out and explore, or just chill and play video games on the bus, or hang out with some of the other bands. Like, And a lot of times that stuff like is going on, but for me, I don't know, like I'm really passionate about like helping other drummers, and even like through the experiences that I'm in, trying to like film content to like help people understand like what, at least from what my perspective, what touring really looks like. So yeah, I think just because that's how a lot of it started for me, I don't want to just kind of let that go. You know, like I'm very passionate about the I Prevail thing, but also the Drum Beats Online thing. So I want to keep pushing them both forward as much as I can, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. That makes total sense for sure. So of the new record, I know you guys have played a couple songs, like the singles live, right? You've played those live at this point.
Yeah, we played in Australia. We played the 3 singles at that. Paranoid wasn't a single yet, but we played it. And then we also played Gasoline live, but that's it, yeah.
Okay, true. So of the songs, going through Rehearsal as you have been preparing for these upcoming Trauma tours, what songs so far are your favorite to play live off of Trauma?
Oh man, that's a great question. So, I have to think. Okay, so I mean, Gasoline is just a blast. That song's just like so hard hitting the whole time. And what's interesting is that like the parts are not difficult at all, but like the way that you have to play that song is essentially just like bashing your drums the entire time. So like by the end of it, I'm generally exhausted. But so for that reason, I love playing that song, and I know like the audience is going to go nuts, which is cool. But then in the same sense, I really like playing songs like Paranoid. For me, are really cool because they kind of have like a hip hop vibe, and for someone who came from like a lot of pocket playing, it feels really good to play something with like a lot of groove and a lot of feel, and like lay into the closed hi-hat a little bit, which is kind of new. So even though those 2 songs are vastly different from each other, those are probably the 2 that like I'm gravitating towards right now.
So when playing like a slower, chiller, like more R&B feeling song like Paranoid, do you stick to like 100% what was written for the record, or is there some improvisation? How much back and forth is there with you actually like changing parts on the fly?
Oh, definitely improv. I definitely like to add in like my own flair live, and kind of let loose a little bit. And the guys are all super cool with it, because that's what I did when I stepped in with Lifelines, is I kind of added a lot of either fills, or whether I'm adding fills or just changing them to just feel a little bit more like my own, or just honestly to make them just a little bit more complex, because they're more fun. And I think certain songs just could use like a little bit of life in them. And I'm very fortunate because when generally in like playing pop gigs and stuff, whenever I would try to do that, the default would always be like, no, play simple. Simple's better, simple's better, simple's better, which is great. I totally get that in those contexts. But with playing like I Prevail, anytime like I add something really fun or cool, or just that sounds a little bit like me, pretty much 100% of the time, they're like, that's great, keep doing that. So they give me a lot of freedom in that, which I love.
So we've talked about I Prevail. I wanna cover some stuff to do with you now. So let's take us back to the beginning. What got you on the drum set, and what were your early years like playing, learning? What bands were you concerned with, starting off, and how old were you, sort of thing?
Sure. Well, I got a drum set when I was about 12 years old. I didn't ask for one, or I had no interest really in the drums at all. But my older brother played guitar, and I think my mom just wanted us to like play music together. So like for Christmas when I was 12, I just got a drum set, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I mean, any 12-year-old kid's gonna be like stoked to have a kit, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of just started playing around with it, and like at the same time, I started getting really into bands like Blink-182 and Green Day, and pretty soon, Travis Barker for me just became like the best drummer in the world, right? in my mind. So I just like started to gravitate towards the drums, and I'd try to like learn all the Blink albums and learn all the Green Day albums. And so it really started there. Frick, I totally forgot the second half of your question.
Oh, no.
Where it started and what else?
No, that was pretty much it. I mean, where you started and what the bands were, and you covered Blink and Green Day. Those are some pretty awesome early influences, and I was pretty much the same way, actually. Like, Trey Cool was the first, Travis later on, but Trey Cool from Green Day was like the first guy that I really worshipped and wanted to learn every song that he played on.
Oh, yeah, man. I learned the whole, like, when American Idiot came out, I learned that whole album, like, front to back. That was really the first album that, like, I realized, like, oh man, I can hear this song and I can like comprehend what the drums are doing and like I can mimic it. So like, yeah, I just naturally listened to the album so much that eventually I could just play the entire album through. And I think that was like really the moment where I was like, oh, I might actually be, you know, when you like invite your friends over and you're like, look, I have a drum set, and they play it and they like, you know, they're just hitting a bunch of stuff. But then you realize like, oh, I can actually start playing to songs. It's like, oh, I might actually want to keep doing this. Like, this is cool. I feel like I like have a connection with this.
So at what age did you start to think about this as a career? Or was there even a time that you really thought about it, just kind of happened? How did that go out to bring you into this sort of career path?
Yeah, honestly, I thought about it as a career like almost instantly. So by the time I turned 13, I progressed. Like the first year that I played, like I said, I learned that whole album within the first year that I started playing drums. For whatever reason, and I don't know if it's just because I was playing a bunch or what, but that first year I just like felt like I really went from like not knowing anything to being able to like play to a click track and play songs and everything. So me and my older brother started a band, and by the time I was 13, we started playing like a bunch of shows. And like we got kind of popular as like a local band. Like a bunch of people would come out to see us. We ended up playing like a hometown show to like 1,000 people, and I was like 14 years old. And I realized like, oh man, this is like, I can't do anything else. Like this is what I want to do. And then a very long road started from there. What I thought, like, you know, from my young, like, naive brain, I was like, oh man, by the time I'm 16, I'll probably be like a professional drummer. But, you know, it didn't happen until like 11 years later, until I was like 24. But yeah, I knew I wanted to do it from like a super young age.
So by 14, you were like, "This is it. I'm gonna smack shells or smack skins for the coming future."
Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, I was horrible in school, and that was like really the first thing that I fell in love with and got super passionate about, and it just never changed.
So once at 14, you're playing these shows. What was your local scene like? Was it really like diverse and lots going on, lots to do, lots to see, lots of bands to play in?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely like a decent amount of other local bands playing, but we really just tried to play like where, I mean, so I'm from the suburbs of Michigan. Like I don't live in a major city or anything like that. I mean, I'm like 45 minutes from Detroit, but especially at that time, Detroit was dead. Like there was absolutely no music scene there at all. So for the most part, it was just kind of like a DIY, like high school scene of like trying to play at skate parks and try to just like play at like random American Legion venues where like old people would go on the weekends. It was just really trying to play like wherever we could, because there were other bands, but not a lot of like really solid like venues that you could go play at. So we kind of just had to make it work with what we had.
When did you start playing? When did you start gigging with other acts for income?
Yeah, probably, let me think. Once I was maybe, 21-ish, 20, probably 20, 19 or 20, now that I think about it, sorry. So basically the story, like once I graduated high school, I went to college for about a semester, and then just kind of knew like it wasn't for me personally. If you want to go to college, I think it's great. But for me personally, it wasn't the route. I just knew I wanted to play drums. And I wanted to play in a band. Like it wasn't just like, oh, we'll go to Berkeley and just get crazy good at drums. Like I wanted to play like in a rock band. And it's not, really school that you can do for that. So I worked a ton of crappy jobs. And while I was working jobs that sucked, so I tried to play like with whatever acts would have me. So that's when I started getting more involved in like the church scene, which was actually awesome because there's a bunch of other musicians there that are gigging on the weekend as well, whether that's just with cover bands or like that's how I got hooked up with like some country bands, some pop bands. After like a decent amount of my like original bands had failed up to that point, like we broke up, that's when I started trying to just play for whoever would ask me. And a lot of that isn't getting paid a lot of money. Honestly, I got paid the most from the churches because, playing local shows, maybe sometimes you get paid $30. Sometimes, it can be anywhere from $30 to $100. It all depends. And the frequency varies as well. But yeah, probably around 20-ish is when it started to happen more in full force.
And so at 20, you're playing for other people. And then when did you decide to start developing your YouTube presence? When did Drum Beats Online become a thing?
Drum Beats Online started in my mind and like behind my computer once at that same age actually, at 20, because that's when I was really trying to figure out like how can I diversify myself as much as possible to make this like drumming thing a real thing. So that's when I started playing out live with people. I started teaching people as well, like in person. And then I was also like, I want to try to do this online thing. My roommate at the time, he actually taught ukulele online and he was really successful at it. And I thought it was really cool. And he was always like, dude, you should do the same thing for drums. And my thought was always like, no, like there's other people doing that. I had never actually like, before filming my first video, I had never actually taught a drum lesson. That didn't come till afterwards. So I kind of had no idea what I was doing, but I decided to give it a try. So by the time I was like 21 is when I think I officially like put out my first Drum Beats Online video. So yeah.
Damn, dude, that's crazy that it was. How old are you now?
I just turned 27.
Wow. So
it's been about 5.5 years since I put out like my first video.
Right on. That's insane. That's so cool. So for somebody looking to get into the scene, get into playing for people, get into doing what you do, what's some advice that you could to give a young drummer of today? Yeah, absolutely. Well, a big breakthrough for me, my thought of being a professional drummer was always touring professionally and playing in front of thousands of people every night. And that always felt like an impossible feat. Like, how do I get from playing in my basement to playing in front of thousands of people? Like, there's such a big gap there. So eventually what I started to realize is, if I really want to start playing drums as a profession, I think if I diversify myself in enough ways, I could maybe quit my really crappy warehouse job and maybe incorporate a bunch of different ways of drumming. For instance, like I said, playing locally as much as I possibly could. And I understand a lot of places don't have a good local scene. Mine didn't as well. But that includes playing at churches. Like, you could literally play every weekend at a church if you want. Then mine also had like a midweek service, so I could play twice a week at a church alone. And then playing with any like local acts. So whether that is original acts or like just doing cover gigs, like that pays, right? If you can play at a bar or you can play at a wedding, like you can actually make money from that. And then the other avenue was teaching in person. This is probably the easiest way to make money as a drummer, especially in the beginning, because one, you're in control of your schedule. And then two, you can, like getting paid $25 for a 30-minute lesson is not unheard of. Like, that's actually a pretty standard rate. So you could end up making $50 an hour teaching lessons. Yes, it does take some time to like get some students and stuff, but like that's pretty awesome. And then if that's all going well and you want to establish an online presence, and I'm sure as you know, that's a slow game. Like there's certain things that are slow games that like are worth it in the end.
but just take a lot of time. So I would say that's like playing at least in like an original band or like making your own YouTube channel. And those I do think are the things that like really start to pay off after a few years. But then there are other ways to like kind of make money quickly, and that is more like either gigging locally or gigging at your churches or teaching in-person lessons. So once I started doing all of those things, I was actually able to like quit my really crappy job and be a professional local drummer, which was a concept that I had never really heard of before that. And then eventually, because I was always like playing drums, I was able to meet so many people that led to a bigger gig like I Prevail. So my advice overall would just be to diversify what you're doing. Whether you're just playing in a band, well then maybe try teaching some lessons as well. And all of those things will come together and build like a really awesome foundation for you.
When was your first time playing live with a click track in your ear with backing tracks?
Probably 13 years old. Yeah, I started playing with tracks right away because we had like the band I played in had some electronics. So it was right away, which was hard as a 13-year-old, but it really kicked my butt at a young age. So I got really comfortable with it really fast.
Yeah, I was the same way. I don't think... Actually, there's a question in this. I was the same way from the standpoint of like I've never played a show that didn't have tracks, and I find it difficult to this day to go on stage if I don't have a click in my ear. Do you think that having like putting the tracks aside, putting the front of house experience aside, just from the standpoint of having that click track in your ear, do you think it helps you or hinders you to have that on stage long term?
Personally. And I've found out from giving this advice in some of my other videos, this is a controversial topic. So I can only speak personally, and that is I love it. I think it's so great to have a click ready to go for every song, because the reality is your adrenaline is going to be in a different spot when you're on stage than when you're not on stage. So having a click track eliminates all possibility of you not playing the song correctly. And I understand if you're a band that doesn't want to stick on the click, or certain sections like change, like get faster in the chorus or whatever. And I think like for those people, I also think it's great to just have like a starting click for each song. So if you can just hear like the reference tempo real quick, then you can shut it off. At least now you have an idea of like, okay, am I like on par with what this song is supposed to be? And I do understand the argument of like, well, you don't want to become like reliant on a click track, but I generally think that falls into like a practice territory. I don't want to become reliant on anything, but for me, I work on those things when I'm practicing, not necessarily like on stage, because I want the show to be as great as it possibly can be, not necessarily like my practice time, if that makes sense. So I love having a click on stage.
Yeah, I agree with you. I can't go on stage without one at this point. And I have firsthand experienced like what you're talking about with the adrenaline pump. I've gone on stage, and even with the click in my ear, especially like when I was first starting to gig seriously, I've gone on stage, the click track kicks in, and I totally blocked it out, and the adrenaline hit, and I just went. Just gone. If it was 150 BPM we were playing at, I was at 220 easy. Forget about it.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm a huge advocate of having that click track there. It just makes everything tighter. I find that it's just really comfortable.
Absolutely. I agree, man. 100%.
All right. Well, let's talk about your gear. So what companies do you endorse?
For companies, I just endorse Meinl cymbals and Vic Firth drumsticks.
How long have you been with Meinl?
I've been with Meinl basically the same amount of time that I've been with I Prevail. They happened simultaneously, but for different reasons. Like Meinl didn't know that I was just about to step in with I Prevail because I was super under the radar. So yeah, I've been with them for about a little over 2 years now.
So what was your early influences? I know you talked a little bit about some punk rock, like Green Day and Blink-182. Once you started to get into heavier and heavier bands, what were some of the bands, you mentioned Under Oath earlier on. What were some of the bands that really like guided you into metalcore?
Yeah, well, Under Oath was the very first one. I think I was like 14 years old, and I was dating a girl in middle school at the time, and she like asked for their new album, which was Define the Great Line. And I remember like I got it for her, but like I decided, I was like, you know what, let me just like, I'll just listen to it, like why not? And like I put it in, and I was like, oh, like this is amazing, like holy crap. So that album really brought me into the world of metal or hardcore or whatever. And so from there, it kind of grew into, I'm trying to think, you know, Under Oath and August Burns Red are like the two that really stick in my brain. And I think one is because with Under Oath, like just Aaron Gillespie's drumming of like how like bombastic and like crazy it was, like really opened my eyes to like another way that you could play drums. And then hearing Matt Greiner on August Burns Red like come up with these insane like essentially melodies behind the drum kit, and like what he was doing I had never really heard anyone else do. So that also like expanded my mind a ton. And so I think like those two bands really stick out for me because those two drummers were like huge influences of mine. As I think of like other hardcore bands, like for whatever reason, like I draw a blank on it. But you know, I think like at the time, like Norma Jean, I really loved. Chiodos, I really loved. We Came as Romans, I really loved. And that was really cool because We Came as Romans, they literally are like all live right where I do, and all of us in I Prevail. Which is super weird because like I said, we just live in the suburbs of Michigan. And I actually used to play with the guitar player of We Came as Romans in church. And then last year we ended up going on a tour with them. So it was like this really cool like full circle moment where I like really looked up to them when I was young and played with them when I was a teenager. And then like essentially 10 years later, we're like on the same stage, like doing the same thing. That was really cool for me.
Yeah, that's absolutely insane. And they opened for you on that tour, didn't they?
They were direct support. So it was not Every Time I Die. It was The Word Alive, We Came as Romans, and then Us, which was like a super awesome tour.
That's got to be so surreal, so insane to have those bands opening for you, especially We Came as Romans having your history. That must have been insane.
Yeah. Oh man, it does. That type of stuff just doesn't get old. And you don't get like used to it. You do in the sense of you become friends with them and you're like, well, these guys are just my friends now, right? But in terms of like, I think to another time when we were playing Warped Tour and like Aaron Gillespie just like walks on my bus and I'm like, wait, what? Like, and I'm, I'm like trying to be cool and trying to be like super normal because he's being normal. But like, I was just so taken off guard, and it's hard to fully like adjust in those moments. Cause for me, I'm still the same like 14-year-old kid who was listening to all these albums and like being so stoked on them. So then to, like I said, play on the same stage is like insane. Yeah, it's very surreal.
So let's talk tour stories. What have been some of the craziest experiences out on the road for you since joining I Prevail?
Oh man, so the weird thing is I Prevail is the most boring band in the sense of like, we're not partiers, like that's for sure. We just like, we like to hang out, play some video games, and like go to sleep essentially. You know, some of the crazy tour stories for them happened before I joined the band. Like their entire bus burned down one time. So I wasn't a part of that, but I know like for them that was like honestly terrifying. They all thought they were gonna die. But man, I mean, a lot of it is just like, a lot of the crazy stories stem from like a lot of quote unquote disasters. Like that's probably an exaggerated way to say it. But you know, I know the first tour I did with them, we popped like 8 tires, and it was like, we would be in the middle of nowhere and it would be like negative 20 degrees and we lost like 2 tires. And it's like a bunch of stuff like that where you end up having to like hop in a box truck and like drive across the country like in the middle of the night. It's like a lot of stuff I like try to forget because it wasn't fun, you know?
Sorry, with the latency, I should have reacted to that. I feel like an idiot.
Oh, you're fine, dude.
Yeah, it's always awkward with the phone. You know how it is, because like I don't want to talk over you, sort of thing. And then I'm like, do I laugh now? Okay. Anyways, let's get back in.
Totally.
Okay, so coming off of tour stories, what have been some really valuable lessons that you have had to learn on the road with I Prevail?
Man, I think like the biggest lessons that I've learned is like, no matter what, try to be like a positive presence in the band, because there's gonna be times where like things really get heated, right? And whether that's like because it's between us, which generally is not, but we might find ourselves in a very like uncomfortable situation, or we just played a horrible show and like emotions are super high. And it's like in those moments, you have a choice. You have a choice to essentially like contribute to the negativity and to like continue to bring the vibe down, or to be like a positive force and to try to like take the moment in another direction. Because the nature of it is like, yeah, there's going to be highs and lows, and it's, you know, obviously it's easy to be positive during the high moments, but when you come off stage and like whether like like something that really gets the band is when security sucks, and we see like security drop like a girl straight on her head. It's like, oh my gosh, like we don't want anyone to get hurt at our shows. So like, you know, stuff like that is just really hard to recover from when you're like trying to like play a show for a bunch of people, but like some people are the cause of other people getting hurt. So, you know, stuff like that sucks, but always just maintaining like a positive mindset and being that person that takes the direction in a more positive light, I honestly think is one of the best things you can do as a member of any band, because the reality is you're going to be crammed in a really small space with a bunch of guys for really long periods of time. So you have to be a person that they want to be around. If you're not in any way, then you're not going to get hired for that gig, or you're not going to stay very long at that gig. And I mean, that's just been such a big lesson, is to, yeah, just be positive, be on time, be like, yeah, be someone that people want to be around. I think that's really important. And as vague of a thing that is to say, or maybe cliche, it really is true. That's the main thing.
So when you're out on the road, I've heard a lot of bands talk about the importance of spending time together and bonding with each other, but also talk about how important it is to make sure to take time away from each other, to give each other space, because, you know, you're living on top of each other at times, and it can get very heated. Do you guys sort of stay together all the time, connected at the hip, you know, you go for lunch together, or do you find that like most of the time you're sort of off doing your own thing?
I would say most of the time we are connected. We are doing our thing together. And that is, I feel like we pair off a lot of the times. So like me and Steve will like go to the gym together and then like go get lunch, or like Brian and Eric they go to a bunch of malls and like find like cool food and stuff like that. And so a lot of the time, and you know, Brian will come work out with us as well. So a lot of the time, like we are together. But there are very intentional times where, like, at least for me specifically, it has to be like, okay, I just need to like go for a walk. For me, like I am a little bit more introverted, so like I do need some alone time. I try not to just like go in my bunk. It kind of feels like depressing. So, you know, just maybe going on a walk for 20, 30 minutes for me is like restorative, or even just like grabbing a practice pad and like going somewhere else, or just like practicing for a while. Those moments have to be like very, very intentional, because otherwise you're just around people like all the time.
What's the hardest part about being on tour?
Being away from your friends and family, like 100%. For me, I'm married. Being away from my wife sucks, like really bad, honestly. Being away from my mom, my brother, and my sister, my nieces and my nephews, all my friends, it's really tough. Like, as fun as tour can be, and as fulfilling as tour can be, there's always going to be a little bit of an empty space there, because there's that piece of you that's still at home with all your loved ones that, you know, that can't really be filled while you're on the road. So for me personally, that is by far the hardest.
Do you maintain contact with your family often on the road, or do you just like nightly call kind of thing? Like how often do you get to talk to home?
Yeah, I mean, I try to often. I mean, like with my wife, we try to talk every day. Some days that doesn't work out. And you know, with my family, whether that's like a once a week catch up call, but you know, I mean, those can end up being like an hour long. So you can end up spending a lot of your time making phone calls to really just try to like keep in contact with people. You know, like you don't want to lose those relationships and grow apart. You know, it's super important.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Do you find that it's like tough having like being across time zones and trying to like communicate with home when it's the middle of the night, things like that?
A lot of the times it can. Generally when we're in the US, you know, it really only spans a difference of like 3 hours. But like when we were just in Australia, the time difference is 16 hours. So it's basically like completely opposite. So that can be incredibly difficult to like try to connect at all. Because yeah, like when you're sleeping, they're awake and vice versa. That can be tricky.
How important to you, like how important do you think it is for somebody playing in a band to have some sort of side hustle like you have with your YouTube channel?
I think oh man, it's a good question. I know I said that a lot. I think it's important I guess I'm only going to speak from personal experience. For me, it's really important because when the skeptical side of my brain looks at the lifespan of bands, right? And a lot of bands, you know, whether like a good lifespan sometimes, or like maybe an average lifespan of a band is about 10 years. So for me, it's like what happens after that? And I mean, for I Prevail, we hope to keep building this thing, right? And to be around for a really long time. But if for whatever reason, if anything happens, like I want to have something that I can continue to do, because at some point in your life, the band is going to break up. That happens to everyone. I mean, that happens to like the biggest bands of all time, you know, whether you break up when you're 70 years old or you break up when you're like 30 years old. I never want to be in a position where something outside of my control happens and then I'm just left with nothing. I always, and again, maybe this is just because I have like control issues, but like I always want to have something that I'm in control of. And for me, that's Drum Beats Online. But you know, the other part of that is that like that's just become something that I've become so passionate about. It's like really a huge bonus where I'm just thankful to have two things that I'm passionate about and be able to do them both at the same time. But yeah, I never want to be like have something blow up in my face and be left with nothing. I always want to have the opportunity to keep pushing something forward, whatever that is.
What do you think was one of the most important things you did that led to you getting picked up by a professional band?
Oh, that's an interesting question. What's the most important thing? I think the most important thing I did was, I mean, aside from taking as many opportunities as I could, right? Making sure that every one of those opportunities I was presenting my best self and my best playing, so that anytime I played out anywhere, I was putting my best foot forward. So, and that's in all aspects. That's in terms of like just being a good person to work with. So I showed up early for everything that I would do. I would make sure that my drums were tuned really, really well so that like my drums would always sound great. I would make sure that I was the most prepared person in the room. So really, if we like lump that all into one thing, it was that like, no matter where I was, if it was involving like the drums, I was trying to leave the absolute best impression that I possibly could, because when you leave a good impression, that generates word of mouth. And when you have word of mouth, you get opportunities. So like I said earlier, I left a great impression when I played at that church, and the sound guy at the church ended up recommending me to Prevail. And like, that's literally how I got the gig, is because I kept making the best impression I possibly could. And I mean, not even Prevail, like that's how I continued to get a lot more local gigs as well, playing with different local artists. Like, I think just showing up and trying to make sure that every aspect of you and your drums and your drumming is the best that it can be takes you such a long way.
So really it just comes down to practicing good fundamentals, is what it sounds like.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of times people just only focus on one or the other, in terms of like, some people are just like, well, I practice 8 hours a day and I'm the sickest drummer ever. And then I'm going to show up to this pop gig and I'm going to show them that I'm the sickest drummer ever, because I'm going to play the freaking sickest chops over this whole song. And while that might be impressive, if you showed up late and maybe your snare drum is cranked up all the way because that's the way you like to chop out, and you didn't play the parts that were right for the song, then you're leaving. You might be a million times better at drums than me, but you're leaving a really bad impression. And that's going to hurt you, unfortunately, even though you put all that time into your playing.
Was there ever a time that you quit and then came back, or or if there wasn't a time that you quit, was there ever a time you came close to?
You know, there was never like a clear-cut time when I quit playing the drums. I would say when I was about 18, I played a lot less, because at that point, a lot of my local bands had broken up. I was starting to get really frustrated with the whole thing. Like, every time I thought I was catching momentum, it would like fall apart. So I remember like kind of just not being as interested in it for a while. And that actually really sucked. That like, I felt like that really stunted my growth. And then, I mean, in terms of when I get close to quitting, honestly, man, like, it happens more than you would think. I mean, I feel like literally like, and again, it's like, I know that I won't quit, but in terms of what goes through my brain, like, I even think about like last week, like I posted a video, and like the video was like relatively like controversial. It was a little bit telling like the Prevail story and how I got the gig. And when I came up to the part where I was talking to them on the phone, and they asked about like my, like, oh, well, you know, how comfortable are you with the double bass drum? And at the time I wasn't comfortable at all, but I was like, oh yeah, man, like, I'm good at the double bass. Like, don't worry about it. By the time like I show up to the audition, like, it'll be great. And basically like from there, I had to buy a double bass pedal and practice it a whole bunch. And like, I got a bunch of comments of like a bunch of people being like, oh, you just like lied your way into the gig. Like, you suck. You know, I mean, you know how YouTube gets sometimes.
Yeah.
And like, that's just super discouraging, where I'm just like, man, maybe I don't want to make videos anymore. And obviously I'm going to keep making videos, but just, I think like in my darkest thoughts, it's kind of like, yeah, maybe I should just not like do this thing anymore. Maybe people don't dig it. I think especially in the online world, that happens like a little bit more often. Thankfully, that happened very rarely. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely like a battle that I go back and forth through, especially you scroll through Instagram. I mean, I see your videos, you know, I see like these sick drummers, and it's just like, shoot, like, maybe I'm not as good as these people. Like, maybe I should just like stop playing, you know? And so it's always working like that mental shift of taking it, kind of like what I said, taking it from a negative to a positive, where it's like, instead of just saying like, well, this is hard, I want to quit, being like, well, this is hard, I'm going to keep pushing forward and make it like the best that I can possibly be, you know?
Yeah, man, it sounds like you have a really healthy outlook on it all. I find that I doubt myself on just about every single video. Like, if you ask my girlfriend, like, every time I upload, which lately has been most days of the week, like probably 4 or 5 days a week, but every single time after I upload a video, I have a good 30-minute period where I'm on the phone with Lindsay saying something along the lines of, holy shit, I'm taking this video down.
Dude, I cannot relate to you anymore, man. Like, that, I 100% the same. Like, every video, I'm like, this sucks. I should
Yep.
did I post this video? Like, this is the worst.
Yep.
I totally hear you, man.
Yeah, just about every single one. I'll get 60 decent comments, thanks for making this, like this was awesome, this really helped, whatever it is. And then I'll see one negative comment and I'll be like, and I'll throw my iPad and I'll want to take the video down and I'll freak out.
Yeah, dude, I totally hear you. It's such a bummer when you can be flooded with like positivity and like just see a few like negative things, and those are the only ones that stick out. Like even the video that I was talking about like last week, I mean, honestly, 95% of the comments were great. And then there was like just that 5%, and that was the only like thing that I was looking at, right? And for me, I'm like, 5% is huge. Like it should be 0% or like 1%, So yeah.
So I guess you do spend a lot of time reading your comments, or do you try and avoid them?
My thing for the longest time, for as long as Drum Beats Online has been around, I tried to respond to basically all comments, and it's maybe not 100%, but at least like 90%. Because some comments like don't even make sense, so sometimes it's hard to respond to them. But even still, while it's not 100% of the comments, I probably respond to about 80 to 85% of every single comment on my video or on my videos.
Do you find that making your videos like makes you a better drummer? Yeah,
definitely. You're able to analyze everything that you do. I've learned so much about what my tendencies are as a drummer. Like in making my videos, I'm like, oh, I naturally play like a little bit behind the beat. Like that's interesting, so things that I would just never realize if I wasn't constantly recording myself and analyzing it in video form too. You're unfortunately forced to be like a big critic of your drumming, but again, if you can like turn it into a positive thing, like you're able to like really grow from it a lot.
Yeah, I had a video, I guess a few months ago at this point. It was how to unstuck yourself or something along those lines. And one of the things that I was talking about in that video was exactly what you just said. When I find that when you record yourself and watch yourself back, during the editing process, you end up catching dozens of mistakes, and then you wouldn't have caught those if you weren't watching yourself back.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of an amazing tool. Regardless or not if you're posting it in front of anyone, like it's just good for you.
Do you guys, when you go out with Prevail, do you guys run like cameras that you use to review and critique each other on, or like do you ever have anything set up like that?
Dang, no, that sounds intense. Is that? I didn't know that anyone else did that, but no, we definitely don't do that. We just have like our photographer and camera guy who will like film some footage, but that's generally like for videos. It's not generally like critiquing.
True. I've been in a couple bands where like the first couple runs will make sure that there's like a camcorder at the soundboard every night. And then after the show we'll be like, what's going on with this? What's going on with that? I don't know. It's something I've seen around just because like to me, especially in the projects that I got involved with, to me, it made a lot of sense because one of the bands I was in, I had a guitarist who ran a YouTube channel. So, both of us sort of saw kind of what you and I are talking about from the standpoint of the more you watch yourself, the more you'll be like, the more it illuminates things that you might not have always caught. So I don't know. We made it a practice, and I was just curious to see if you guys, sort of did that.
No, I mean, I think that's pretty awesome. Generally we're pretty good at pointing that stuff out in practice and like with ourselves individually. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a bad idea by any means. I think that's actually pretty cool.
I've seen it too, where it's like in rehearsal too sometimes, like you would tape rehearsals. Have you done anything like that?
No, we've never done that either, but maybe we should.
Dude, I don't know, man. This is Prevail we're talking about. If you guys have made it this far, I think whatever you're doing is working.
Well, thank you.
All right, so let's talk about your mindal cymbals. What cymbals do you play, and why did you pick those series, those sounds? Why? What do you go for?
It's interesting because my setup is different depending on whether I'm like just playing here in my studio or I'm playing live with Prevail. So for sake of ease, let's talk about like the Prevail setup. So what I've started to gravitate to with the Prevail setup is volume and like durability in a way, but while also that's just practical for when you're on tour. You don't want to break stuff like all the time. But also I'm always drawn to darker and lower pitched cymbals. So I always prefer cymbals that like blend into the mix more rather than sit like way on top of it or like cut all the way through it. The really high pitched cymbals, I don't know, just kind of like hurt to me. So for Prevail, I play 15-inch Byzance traditional hi-hats. I generally always stick with 15-inch hats, and especially just because you get a little bit more size, so you get like the warmer, like lower undertones, but it doesn't really lose stick definition. I feel like when you move to 16-inch hats, that's when the definition starts to go a little bit. And then for like my left-hand crash, I just use another Byzance traditional 18-inch thin crash. I just love thinner cymbals. I feel like the thicker they are, the less they blend. And then a new thing that I've incorporated is the 21-inch polyphonic ride, and I'm loving this thing. Like that ride it's so crashable, and that's basically all I'm using my crash for in the Prevail set is like a big crash, my ride. And it's so great just because it fits everything that I just said, where it's like really thin, it's crashable, and it has like this insanely warm, low undertone to it, which is just awesome, but while also having a bell that projects pretty great. And then I just have a 20-inch Byzance traditional crash cymbal, which is just kind of like a tried and true 20-inch, like nice and durable crash. And then in terms of China, something I've been messing around with more lately is a 20-inch China. For a song like Bow Down, it's like I just want like a huge sound out of that China. So I've been experimenting with doing like a 20-inch Byzance traditional China. But what I've been using before that, which the issue is I break Chinas often. I just hit really hard live. So the China cymbal that never ever breaks is the 18-inch Classics Custom China. It's just like a powerhouse. So I'll probably bring that too, just in case I end up breaking the 20-inch. And then on this tour, I'm gonna bring out the stack that I've been using a lot, especially for some of like those like songs like Paranoid, which are like more like groovy on like the close hi-hat. I can add in like cool accents with the stack cymbal. And that is a 16-inch extra dry China with holes drilled into it, with a 16-inch Byzance trash crash flipped upside down on top of that. And I think that gets like a super sick sound out of it. But yeah, that's my setup for the tour.
That's sick, man. So yeah, I prefer dark cymbals as well. For the exact reason you're talking about. I want something that will sit nicely inside of the guitar wall and not be too blaringly loud over top of it, kind of thing.
Totally. And I noticed that you have one of the dual crashes, which that series is like one of my favorite series from Vinyl. I love the dual cymbal series.
Yeah, I got that cymbal as a mistake, actually.
Really?
I'm enjoying it now. Yeah. I'm enjoying it now that I've had it for a little bit, and I'm sort of getting better at recording it.
Okay.
But the first couple sessions I did with that cymbal, it was really difficult to get any high end, to get like that real attack. It was very soft and dry.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think I would go with a dual crash again. I've been watching some of Luke Holland's older videos. He has in his Mikasa cover, he has I think his full set is all dual, and he has 2 crashes. So I'm at the 20-inch right now with that guy, and I think I'm gonna go down to like a 16 or an 18.
Gotcha.
I think that should help.
Yeah, I hear you. I have the 15-inch dual hats, which I love, and the 18-inch dual crash. I actually don't have like the 20 or the 22. But having the 15-inch hats and the 18-inch crash just as like a left-hand crash, I love. I think it's super great.
So what when it comes to durability, what do you look for? Because I hear people talk about this all the time. Like people will say, well, thin cymbals will absorb the blow better, so they won't crack as much. And then people on the other hand will say thicker cymbals because they're thicker and more durable. Like, what do you find is the most durable?
Yeah. Oh man, that's such a hard one because I hear both of those arguments as well. But for me, it always comes down to sound over durability. So I really never. Okay, so if I really have to think about it, I look at the cymbals that I break on tour. Right, I always crack at some point. I always crack my right hand crash. And I think generally that's just because I'm on that the most. Then every once in a while I'll crack a ride or my left hand crash. I never break hi-hats. And I never break that Classics Custom China. And if I look at those two things, those are both thicker than everything else that I'm playing. So at least from my experience, maybe having thicker cymbals is actually a little bit durable. I don't know if it's really easy to say definitively, but I don't know. I totally get the argument of like thinner cymbals like bend with the cymbal and they give more, which is awesome. But at the end of the day, like I just prefer sound over just having a cymbal for forever. And if I'm not on tour, like to be clear, when I'm on tour, I do break cymbals, but when I'm off tour, a cymbal lasts me about 5 years.
Wow.
So no matter how thin it is, it'll last me like 5 years. But unless I'm on tour, hitting it as hard as I absolutely can every single day, and then, it gets sweat all over it, and then it gets put into a closed, like dark area, and then it gets mold on it, it's just a harder life on the road. But I think at home, it doesn't make a huge difference.
Yeah, I haven't been able to differentiate either. I find that I crack all my cymbals just as fast.
Yeah. Oh man.
So let's talk off the kit for a bit. What outside of drumming, when you're at home, what kind of things do you play video games? Do you get involved with sports teams? Like what kind of things do you do outside of music?
Definitely not a sports guy. I actually posted a video today on my Instagram of like all of us dudes from Prevail playing like basketball, and it's just a montage of us missing like every single shot. Even though some of those guys are actually like pretty decent, but for me, I grew up playing sports, but I just don't like keep up with them at all. So honestly, like the things I'm really into, it's hard because a majority of the time, Drum Beats Online has taken up like all my time, really trying to build it and kind of make it what it is, but even trying to keep building beyond it. That ended up kind of taking like my hobbies as well of like drumming and then like building a business really, which is weird. But as I try to like find more life balance, I think the things that I really get into, like I said earlier, is like exercise and cooking. Like I really love cooking, all sorts of different stuff. More recently, I've gotten into video games a little bit, which is weird. That I really love movies. So I get like all day I'm like listening to like different like movie podcasts and like keeping up on like movie news and stuff, which is, I don't know why I like it so much. I just think it's fun. But yeah, on tour, because so many of the guys play video games, I eventually got into playing again. Like I used to play a lot in my teens, but like playing games, like basically the only games I play are like Rocket League and like Super Smash Bros. And I'll just like go back and forth on those. But yeah, it's like being a healthy person is fun for me. And then like watching some movies and playing a little bit of video games. I guess I'll like skateboard and stuff every once in a while, but yeah, nothing too crazy.
Is there anything that you do off the drum set that you find helps you on the drum set?
That's a good question. Yeah. Yoga. It's...
Oh my God.
What?
I have multiple videos on why I do yoga every day.
Oh, no way, dude. That's amazing.
Yeah. And it's because of the drum set. That's crazy.
Wow, dude, I gotta watch those videos. That's great. Yeah, man, it goes back to like this mental struggle that I have, and I think more than just me, like so many drummers have, especially now today, like where you step behind the drum kit and you get so frustrated with yourself, or whether you see other drummers just kill it and you get down on yourself. And yoga has been an incredible experience for me to get my mind right and get my mind like on the right track, like towards like positivity and like self-encouragement. And that has like, it's just changed the way that like I play the drums and that I view the drums, rather than every time I step behind the kit being really frustrated that I'm not like as good as I want to be. I'm much more like accepting as like, this is where I am right now. And like, I love this instrument and I'm having fun with it. And I'm just going to keep building towards getting to where I want to be. But I mean, the reality is that's growth. Like you're never going to, like the moment that you're fully satisfied with where you're at is the moment that you stop growing or you stop playing, you know? So it's really helped my mindset behind the drum set. And that's been more and more a theme as the past few years as I get older, where it's how much the mental state affects like the way I play drums or like the way I approach drums is, you know?
Yeah, it's so cool to hear you say that. And it's something that I give advice to everybody I talk to that asks, like, how do I get faster at this? How do I get better at that? How can, I'm having this pain. How do I get rid of it? I always talk about yoga. I preach yoga so much. And I find that I don't think I would be the drummer I am if it wasn't for yoga, because of both mind and body and what it's done for me. Like it is allowed. I find that the more I practice yoga, the more centered and coherent my thoughts are. And that comes into play every time I sit down at the kit. I can express things differently because I feel clearer, and then on the body side of things, I got into a ton of problems. I've always been a crazy heavy hitter.
Yeah.
And I sort of started in metalcore. I started double kick day one. I'm like, that's where I want to go. It has to be metal, it has to be fast, it has to be hard. And I jacked my wrists and my elbows up and my shoulders so bad because I wasn't like properly maintaining myself. And I fixed myself with yoga, and I still do it every day. Even when I go out on the road or I'm in a studio that's somewhere else or I'm traveling, I still find time for yoga. So that's so cool to hear that you find benefits for yourself on the kit from that.
Absolutely, man. I mean, yeah, it seems like you might even be like on that next level. What, just out of curiosity, how do you, like for me, I actually have a gym that does yoga classes, which is great. But like, how do you, like, do you just do like your own thing, or do you watch like a video that you do like follow along to? Because like as I go on the road, I'm like, I don't know how I'm gonna keep doing yoga, Yeah, that's a great question, and that's basically the follow up to everybody that asks me, how can I solve this pain in my wrist? And then I say yoga, and then they say, how the hell do you do yoga? Like, where are you doing this? Where are you going? So there's a YouTube video. Originally it was a DVD, and I got the DVD originally, but then somebody posted on YouTube, and it's so old now that it doesn't get taken down. It's no big deal. But there's a YouTube video it's by Bob Harper, who was the host of The Biggest Loser at one point, but he used to teach yoga classes and CrossFit classes and whatever. And he has there's a video up. It's just Yoga for the Warrior, and he has like multiple versions of it. And I started yoga because of that. I think my dad brought the DVD home one night when I was a kid, and I threw it on, and it wasn't like typical yoga. It was fast. We were doing push-ups between poses. Yeah. There was rock music in the background. Nice. The guy hosting it was covered in tattoos. Huh. I was like, man, this looks sick. I got to give this a shot. And to this day, I just literally, wherever I am, I look up those Yoga for the Warrior YouTube videos. I've included them in the links of several of my videos where I've talked about this. I'll include it in the links of this video as well. So for all of you watching at home, you can check that out there. And yeah, I mean, it's super convenient because I can do it wherever. The other thing too is like I've gotten so familiar with that video, and there's like 2 or 3 in the series. I've gotten so familiar with them that I don't really need the audio anymore. So I've just like recorded I don't need the video anymore. Excuse me. I just recorded the audio into whatever. So I have them in MP3 versions, just like after like
dumping them into my DAW sort of thing, and then bouncing them out as MP3, so I can take them, in my iTunes app on my iPad or whatever, and I can just listen and do them wherever I am.
Dude, that's awesome. That's super smart. I love it.
Yeah, man. So is there anything else that helped you? Like, do you do cardio or anything that has affected your playing, or is it just the yoga?
No, I don't do any cardio. I probably should. Like, when I just think about like being healthy, in terms of like exercising, I'm built like very skinny. So basically anytime I do any sort of cardio, like all my muscle just like leaves my body. So it's really hard for me to like kind of like put on muscle. So that's why I generally I just stick to like the weightlifting, and the yoga is like almost my form of cardio, even though it's not cardio. It's like, that's essentially what I put in place of cardio. But no, any cardio that I do, it's just like natural stuff that I would do for fun, like bike riding or skateboarding or, but I never like get on a treadmill and just like go to town.
Yeah, people ask me like, what do you do for cardio sessions? And I'll always be like, dude, I play double bass. What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, man. So your group of friends at home, do you have a group of friends outside of music, or do you find that most of the guys you associate with and hang out with when you're not on the road, they're just other musicians?
It's definitely a mix of both, for sure. I think just because I started playing drums so young, I started making so many musician friends from a very young age. So a lot of my friends are musicians. Like at one point when I was like starting the Drum Beats Online thing, I had 6 roommates that I lived with, and every single one of them was a musician except for one. He was like a lawyer. But yeah, I would say probably like 80% of my friends are musicians. And a big part of that is just because of my upbringing, and just from growing up with those people. But yeah, it's weird. I actually never really think about it anymore though, because now when we hang out, it's not as focused on music, and a lot of those guys, while they might still play, like for work, they're doing other stuff. So whether that's like video editing or whatever, it's all still like creative. So most of my friends are like kind of in that creative space, but probably 20% of them aren't, and it doesn't affect. It's actually sometimes really nice to just like not, focus on the music thing and just to hang out and talk about anything else that's not music. But for the most part, I love talking about drumming and everything like that. So.
Yeah, that's actually like your point there at the end. That's the reason why I was asking, because I've found that I have friends in both, and I have mostly music friends, just because like you said, like I decided pretty early on too that this was gonna, that music was gonna be my job. So like most of the guys, because of that I know, are just happen to be musicians. But I find that at times like I need to step outside of the grind of all of the music talk, of all of the YouTube comments. I need to step outside of it and just like get free time with people that aren't going to ask me questions about it, or that came across kind of weird. You know what I'm saying though, that don't like want to sort of obsess over gear at the moment, or you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I think it really helps that like my wife isn't a musician of any sort. She appreciates music, which is great, because if I show her something, she has an appreciation for it. She's not like clueless, but that's not, like, I think it is cool sometimes when like 2 musicians like are together. But for me, just personally, it's nice that, when I'm hanging out with her, she's not asking me like a ton of questions of like, oh, well, what do you think about this song that I just wrote? Or what about this melody? Or like, could you do this drum part? It's nice to just like, when I'm just like hanging out with her, we can just like do our own thing. You know what I mean?
So when you go out on the road and you're interacting with fans, you're doing signings, you're whatever it is, you're hanging out at the merch table after the show. Have you had like some really awkward or some really weird experiences with fans?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because a lot of the time a majority of my time with I Prevail has been like this touring member, right? So a lot of the times I can keep my head down, and like, I mean, half the time I don't even need to keep my head down. No one actually cares about me, which is a unique experience, but has been one that like I actually think is cool, where I can literally play to, you know, all these people and then walk off stage, like, or even walk by these people and them like not even know or care who I am, which is great because I don't know, I prefer to be like a humble person and not like expect that from people. But as things have progressed, you know, like I've been around for longer, there's definitely more of the fan interaction, which is really fun. And it's honestly, it's never been a negative experience. There's just, people just say really interesting things to you. Like, oh man, like people really want to like essentially like audition for the band, where like you'll walk off, like in January, we were playing on a cruise, weirdly enough, called Shiprocked, where I literally walked right off stage and there was like a guy standing right there, and right away he was basically like, yeah, like I wanna join your, and okay, to preface it, this guy is about 55 to 60 years old. He's like, yeah, I would just love to like audition for your band. Like I think you could use like another guitar player, and you know, I would love to be that guy. So like, you know, I like, why don't you have another guitar player? Like I should be in the band. And you're just like, this is so, like, you're trying to like catch your bearings because you literally just got off stage, and one, you're not expecting to like see anyone right there, and he's trying to like pitch himself, and stuff like that gets like uncomfortable because you're not gonna like shoot him down, right? You're not gonna be like, nope, sorry dude, like sucks for you. But I feel like I've had a few experiences like that where people just try to like join the band somehow. So that's generally not the best way to try to get in a band, just so everyone knows. But, and I mean, yeah, then some people, like, sometimes people, like, you'll go into your bus after a show, and like we've had like, sometimes people will just open the door of the bus and like walk in, and it's like, whoa. And for us, like, the bus is basically your house. I mean, it's not basically, it is your house. So if you could imagine like sitting in your living room and someone just opens your front door and like walks in and you have no idea who they are, it's like, whoa, what's going on? Like, get out, you know, like it freaks you out. You don't know what's going to happen. So there's certainly awkward experiences sometimes where people just are a little bit too eager. So yeah, you got to figure out how to navigate through those situations.
That's interesting that you like that you can sort of keep your head down and not be noticed, because I find that I'm the exact same way. Like after stepping off stage, I'd like to be left alone. I want to pack up the gear, you know, like I find that, I don't know, I'm pretty, like, I'm an introvert too. So, I mean, I feel like a lot of drummers are like that, you know, where we can all relate with like, yeah, it's nice to be behind the kit and not have to move around too much, you know, and just play the gig, get off, be done, you know.
For sure.
So yeah, this has been an absolute blast. Thank you again for doing this. Let everyone know real quick where your YouTube, for sure. I'm sure a lot of my viewers already know about you on YouTube, and you've been requested like crazy ever since I started this series. So it's awesome. I can't wait for all the people who've been asking you to come on to get to see this. And yeah, just let everybody know your socials real quick, and I guess we're good.
Oh man, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on here. That's like super weird to me to think that like you've actually had people request me to come on. That like kind of blows my mind a little bit. And dude, I just want to say, like, I found your videos a few months ago. Like your Scars playthrough like came up on my recommended feed, and I remember just like looking at it and like being like, holy crap, man, this guy is like spot on. Like your playing is like fantastic. I think you've created like a really cool community around like such a specific area of drumming, you know, like the metal drumming thing, and you do it so well. Your cover of Bow Down is sick. Like your drums sound great. You're doing a really cool thing, and I'm honored to be a part of it. I don't actually even feel like a metal drummer, so I'm like, what am I even doing here? But again, I'm stoked to be here. Thank you for having me. If you would like to find more of me, you can search drum beats online on anything, and you will find me. That's YouTube, Instagram, website. Yeah.
So there you have it. I really, really hope you enjoyed episode 3 of Line Check. I want to extend a huge thank you to Gabe for agreeing to do this with me. It was an absolute blast getting to work with you, getting to collaborate with you on this project. Right from the very beginning, Gabe made this process extremely easy and enjoyable throughout for me. So thank you, Gabe, for being such an incredible guest. Videos like these are only made possible because of people like you supporting the channel. If you would like to support the channel because you enjoy the content here I have to offer, you can do so through my Patreon link in the description or my merch link in the description. If you're not subbed and you enjoyed this video and you want to be notified when future episodes of Line Check drop, make sure to get subscribed. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. If you want to connect with myself further or with Gabe further, you can find links to our social media pages in the description below. As well, you can find links to many of the different things that we talked about and referenced during this episode. So if you're interested in looking further into some of the things we were talking about, you can find those links below. Thank you so much for checking out this video, and I will see you all very soon with something new.